My name is William C. Nelson. I entered service in 1942 at age 22.
Where were you from?
Apollo, Pennsylvania.
Why did you join the service?
That's a long story. I was deferred from service because I worked in the open hearth of the United States Steel. All my friends had left. I volunteered to be drafted. I went into the service then as a volunteer.
Can you tell me the bomb groups that you were in and your position on the planes that you flew in?
I was with the 389th Bomb Group, 564th Bomb Squadron. Then I was with the 98th Bomb Group, 9th Air Force. Then I was with the 491st, 853rd Bomb Squadron.
And what did you do?
I was the armor gunner, and also I was an instructor in gunnery.
And how many missions did you fly in total?
I had 28 missions. Okay, on the, would this be your left or right?
It's the only one we see.
Okay, that's myself there, and Michael J. Lishow, a very good friend of mine. In that photograph, I was taken at North Pickenham, England, at the 491st Bomb Group. The picture was taken in August 1945, about the 18th. I just returned home from England. Okay, where the X is, that's myself. I'd just come out of Morley Hall Hospital after 4.5 months, and they had a dedication of the Presidential Citation for Ploesti. And as you can see, I'm in the front line there as being one of the Ploesti veterans. This is a picture of John Blackus from New Kensington, Pennsylvania, near my hometown. John I knew before the war. This is his crew, and the story on it is that when we come back from Ploesti, John had engine trouble coming up past Portugal, back to England, and he was interned in Portugal. While interned there, they sold his airplane to get him out of there. The government did. Do you believe that?
Which one's him?
That's Johnny's a pilot. Right here in the middle. Right here, and this is him over here. Yeah. Okay, this is on Alfa Romeo. This is the target we hit with the 98th. As you can see, the aircraft are anywhere from 50 to 100 feet, or a little bit higher above on the bomb run. When we went in, the bombs were delayed action bombs, so that we could get out of the way, and there was a little bit of a foul-up on that mission. The navigator went down the wrong valley to begin with. We had to turn around and come back, and when we did, we went down the valley, the bombs were just going off beneath us as we come through. So we lost quite a few aircraft. But that is in the history books of the Air Force, and we lost quite a few. We lost over 300 men on that mission. Okay, that is the 389th Bomb Group. I received this from a friend of mine because I was in the 389th. Although I didn't fly with them on that mission, I went with the 98th, and that was when they buzzed the field coming back before they landed, the survivors. There was more, but that was one flight. Okay, this is Lieutenant Hughes's crew. He went with the 389th, the 564th Bomb Squadron to Ploesti, and over the target he was hit so badly there was no way of returning. So he dived his aircraft into the Romanian oil field and received the Congressional Medal of Honor. This is Buck Chiswalla. He lives in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. He flew 50 missions in the South Pacific, then came to England and flew 30 missions with us in the 491st. I met him 2 days ago in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. We had a nice reunion, and I hadn't heard from him for at least 20 years, and I thought he was dead. And it was a very nice experience. That's the old B-24D that we took overseas. It only had nose guns instead of turrets, had no belly turret, just had a top turret and a rear turret and 2 side guns. And that is the number of people it took to put the 564th Squadron into the air of our 12 ships.
And that's with the 389th Bomb Group?
389th Bomb Group, 564th Bomb Squadron at Hethel, England, yes. That's First Lieutenant John England. He's from Boston, Massachusetts. He was my first pilot, and was very, very good at flying. He became a Pathfinder pilot in the last 2 missions. I didn't complete with him because I had been grounded. And I was with another crew when I was grounded, with Captain Wright's crew. And I was one of those volunteer for anything, get the missions over and go home, you know, if I could. So I was a little bit ahead of the crew. But I understand that Johnny is deceased. I'm not sure, but I was told he was. Okay, that's navigator, Lieutenant Russell on the left, co-pilot, Lieutenant Blakeman in the middle, and Lieutenant Glenn on the other side, bombardier. Lieutenant Russell is disabled, 20 millimeter hit him, and he was disabled, taken off the crew. Lieutenant Blakeman went on as first pilot on his own crew, and the first mission he went on, he was lost. Airplane disintegrated. He also took our tail gunner, which is same name as mine, Keith Nelson. And Keith got out, but nobody knew how. 3 months later, in fact, I have a poem here I wrote about Keith. 3 months later, he showed up in the barracks, and I thought he was a ghost. They brought him back through the underground. And everybody said the aircraft just totally disintegrated in air. It's one of those miracles. And that is the airfield at Metfield in southern England, where the 491st was established. And in that photograph, you will see a check mark there, if it comes out, where the crater. And what happened there was one of the crews had lost 2 engines on the port side and did the fatal thing of banking into those 2 engines with a full bomb load and ended up in that hole.
Point to that check mark.
In that crater right there. Yeah. Just before that was when the bomb dump blew up in Metfield, just before that. This is the inside of the old fighter hangar. It's called a blister hangar that was given to me to build this training center for the bombardiers, navigators, and gunners. Now what we put in there was turrets and free standing machine guns. And that screen, we put fighter planes went across that screen to give them the tracking they needed to track a fighter plane in flight. On the second one over there, that's the turret ensemble with the belly turrets and a top turret there. This one over here is a control section for the cameras that went onto the screen, and that over there is a tail turret over there. And we give them all simulated firing situations back and forth on to lead and to not to lead. All right, this is what I call a German Superman. This young fellow here can't be more than 17 or 18 years old. He was flying an Me-109, that's a Messerschmitt 109 fighter plane. It was shot down over North Beckenham, and this picture was taken to show what kind of men we were after, and it make you almost feel sick at these young boys. That's how bad they had got in their manpower. And this is where the boys were trapped at the Ardennes, and they asked for a mission to send supplies in. So the 491st and a couple other groups were asked if they would do this, and we did, and we kicked the supplies out through the bomb bays, and it was very low level, and I think to this day that saved part of the troops from starving. Okay, that's a B-24D coming back from Italy over the desert, coming back into the 389th Bomb Group at Libya, at Benghazi, and it had been hit by a fighter plane going through. It wasn't by gunfire. The plane hit it and tore the top of it. It got back. So, okay, this is myself on the left, and Bobby Friend, one of my instructors, and Mike Glacier, another of my instructors, in front of our Quonset hut. And the bicycle I had while I was in England, and when we decided to come home, there was a young boy in North Beckenham Village that didn't have a bicycle, and Mrs. Gee, what's her name now? Can't think of her name now. Well, anyway, Tractor Annie, a lot of fellows are going to know this if they look at this thing. Tractor Annie's sister, Mrs. Hood, she found a boy, and I gave him that bicycle. And I wonder this day, he's a grown man now, but when I went back to England last year, and 4 years before, he wasn't in the community. She told me he'd gone.
Tell us about your first mission.
My first mission was into the North Sea out of Hethel, and we had gone to the Zuider Zee, and we were aborted from the Zuider Zee of kind of the weather, and coming back there was a convoy in the North Sea. So we were told to take any opportunity. So Johnny said, there's a convoy down there, and we'd go investigate it. So we went down, made a bomb run, and we missed the whole ship. A whole bunch of them, we never hit one of them. That was the first mission.
Tell us about the transfer to the group that flew the Ploesti raid.
Okay. When we arrived in Benghazi, it was about the 27th of July. And just on the day before the Ploesti mission, why they asked for volunteers, because they said it was an all-volunteer mission. Nobody had to go if they didn't want to. But the word came out that the 98th needed some gunners. So there were about 5 or 6 of us that volunteered to go. And they flew us over to Leyte in Egypt. And that's when I met Captain Banks and his crew. One of his mission boys had come down with some kind of flu or something, and he couldn't make the mission. So that's when I flew that mission up to Ploesti and back.
When you were on that Ploesti raid, what was the sequence of events that occurred?
Well, after we got across the mountains in Greece, we had to drop down to about 50 to 100 feet on account of the radar. And that's why the mission was decided to go in at that level. They wanted a surprise mission, so we dropped down to that level, and then from then on, why, everything is just there. I mean, all hell broke loose when we started into the target. I seen haystacks open up and 88s come out of them that were hidden, camouflaged. Barn doors would fly open and they'd come out at low level. We'd fire at anything that was loose going through there. And next thing I know, we're through the thing and the hell and everything, and we're starting to gain altitude and checking everybody, see everybody's all right. And we had a lot of holes in the ship, but we did make it back to Crete.
How long was the bomb run, and what did it feel like?
Oh, I would say it was no more than 40 seconds, actually, the bomb run. And as for feeling, I don't think you had time. I didn't have time to think about it. I was firing a twin 50. We had twin 50s in the waist. And I was firing that, and anything that would move, and the excitement, and the noise, and it just, all once then it was just silent. It was over. And we were climbing to get out of there.
When you made the trip back, did you have any trouble?
Not really, no. We had all 4 engines, and we had low on gas. That's why we went into Crete. We couldn't make it back to Leyte.
How many people did you lose on that mission, and what were the results of the mission?
The exact number? I have it written down here,
Just a guess.
but the guess, we lost, I think it was 57 aircraft on that out of 170 some. So you multiply that by 10 men, you've got a pretty good substantial figure. But remember, some of those went into Turkey and were interned, and they got back after the war.
Did you have to fly any more raids on Ploesti?
No, that was the only one. We went to low level. I have some friends that flew in the 15th Air Force that went in at high level and bombed it at 20, 25,000 feet. After that, the results, from what we were told, for the number of men expended, it was a very poor mission. They knocked out the oil for approximately 6 months, and they were back in production. The Germans were very efficient. and they were back in production there. So when you try to put a cost on it, it was an awful cost to men and machines to do that low-level raid. It didn't just quite hit Germany like it should have, I thought, after I reflect back now after the years. But we thought we did the best we could, really.
When you came back to England, what was your most dangerous mission?
My most dangerous mission was Gotha, Germany. And that's where we lost, I think, 10 or 12 ships over that. Now, you have to remember, most of my missions were flying without fighter support because we had no long-range fighters. We had the English Spitfire, and the Hurricane would take us to the coast of France and then wiggle our wings and turn around and go back, and we'd go on. And Goring's Yellow Noses were the most notorious of the whole bunch, and they would wait, on us. And we'd go out. First mission I went on was 25 ships. That was the maximum. When they finished up, they were flying 3,500 ships to Germany, and they had all kinds of fighter support. The first fighters I seen was a Lockheed twin boom, were the first ones. And they looked just like the German Messerschmitt twin boom. And several of them were knocked out of the sky by our own gunners. And also, the Hawker Fury looked like a Messerschmitt 109, and we knocked a couple of those out. I mean, I have to admit that. We knocked a couple of those out of the sky of the English. But that had to be that because we couldn't help that. And so once they turned, they had orders never to turn into a formation. But once they would turn into formation, you had no alternative.
What made that particular raid so bad?
Well, I think what made it so bad was the fighters. It wasn't so much the flak as was the fighters. The Yellow Noses hit us pretty hard that day, and they come through. One that I remember very closely, we went down towards St. Moritz in Switzerland, and it was the first time I'd ever seen a jet, a 262. And I called in on the intercom because we were already able to do that without any interference, and I said, "There's something out there that has no propellers on it." And they said, "No, it can't be." But he's in the top turret. He called in and said, "Yeah, it's turning in this way. No propellers on it." So they went through the formation, whew, just like that. They were very inaccurate, but they went through the formation. They only made one or two passes, and then they left. When we come back to interrogation, we tried to tell them that we had seen these jets, and they said, "No, you didn't. You've never seen anything. Don't even mention it." Well, it wasn't very long until they found out that we did see them, and they did let it out. The intelligence let it out. Yeah.
You mentioned being grounded. Could you tell us why you were grounded and what you did after that?
I was hit by 20 millimeter fragments, and I got up here, my head, got a little plate in there, and I got a bad knee, and they decided that I couldn't fly high altitude anymore after I come out of the hospital. So I resigned myself to that. I had already did my 25, and when I finished my 25th, they changed to 30. And I was going for 30 when they changed to 35. But I got to 28, and we come into the coast of England, and I don't remember now anything. I woke up in the hospital.
What mission was that on?
That was my 28th mission. I'm trying to think. I think what mission it was. It wasn't too far in, and I think it was Bremerhaven.
On the mission that you were hit, what part of the mission was that on, and what was it like after you got hit to get back to the base?
Okay, we'd come off the target because the fighters never come in until after we come off the target. They wouldn't go in on the flak. And we just come off the IP, initial point. And in Chaco Holler, there was a fighter at 9 o'clock coming in. And next thing I know was whoop, and I was down. And all I remember is just that noise, all I remember. And I guess they bandaged me up and poured some sulfa in me and got me back, and I was taken out of the ship, and because I was completely out of it. I remember nothing about it, and I woke up in Morley Hall. It's about 5 miles from Hethel base, and that's where it was, they tell me it was touch and go for a good while, until, like I said, about 4 months before I got to where I could get back.
After the war, and a lot of soldiers didn't talk much about their experiences. What do you suppose the reason was for that?
Well, I can tell you why I didn't. I wanted to forget. Still do.
Well, what did you do after the war? After your stay in the hospital, you were reassigned. What was the work that you performed then? Were you still in the service?
No. When the war ended in Europe, I had about 198 points. So when they broke up the group at North Pickenham, and they said we was going back on the Queen Mary, I got back home. I got into Fort Dix, and the fella said, "You're going to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, and then from there you'll be reassigned." And I thought, well, why in God am I going to be reassigned? I can't fly anymore. I can't. I'm an armored gunner. I have no profession as a mechanic or anything like that. So when I got to Indiantown Gap, Lieutenant there said to me, he said, "You want to stay in the service?" And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Well, you have more and more and enough points to get out." He said, "You're going home on 30-day leave." So I went home on 30-day leave, come back, and I was there 3 days. I was discharged on my birthday, August the 22nd, 1945.
Tell us about the material you developed for training aerial gunners overseas.
Okay. When we got up to North Pickenham, I found that there was a blister hangar there, which is it's an old fighter hangar. Most people don't know what they are, but they're shaped like this, but they're long. And I had an officer assigned to me the name of Charlie Forst. He lives in Kingston, New York yet. And I said to him, I said, "Boy, that'd make an ideal place for a training center for new crews coming in." So he went and he procured that. And I said, "Now, what we need to do," I said, these fellows coming over don't know anything about aerial firing. They don't learn that in the States. They go up and shoot at a sleeve, and they don't know anything about tracking or leading or anything. I said, what we need to do is set up some kind of a school here where they can learn that. So I was sent over by Liverpool or Brandon to the RAF base over there for 4 weeks of training under the RAF. And when I come back, there was a flight lieutenant come back with me, Fryer, I think his name was. And we went to work, and we procured old ships that were no longer serviceable, what we needed, the equipment. And we set this thing up. We got a big screen put in there, and we got the turrets set up and the cameras and everything. And then he showed us how to put this projection on the screen to where, in certain instances, you don't fire ahead of the plane, you fire back of it, and all these projections, see. And this is what we taught them. Plus the fact we had orientation. When the new crews come in, we had a big room in there, and we set them down, and we told them that the fun and games is over. This is it. This is where you really learn to survive. So we taught them how to survive as much as we could. We taught them everything that we thought they needed as far as a parachute, carrying a parachute, dinghies, for in case they bailed out, how to use this. Some first aid even. We had some of the Red Cross girls come in, and they would teach some first aid to the fellas. And this was basically what we did. So after we got this done, the fellow I'm talking about, Charlie Forrest, a friend of mine, actually, now, real good, he was traveling down to another base for some reason, and he ran into the training officer down there, and he said, I'm going to show you some pictures here of a thing we have here. And Charlie said, what do you mean you have? He said, well, we're in the process of building this. And he looked at the picture and he said, where'd you get these pictures? He said, oh, well, we're not going to say. He said, well, there's pictures of our training center. So he didn't think too much about it, and he got the pictures and brought them back. We didn't think about it. Next thing I know, he said to me, he said, you know, I just read in some special orders where a master sergeant down in Air Base 1 something was just awarded the Bronze Star for building a training center. So that's where it went. But that was,
and you didn't get the credit for it.
I needed it. What I needed was to get home.
How did the war change you?
Well, I've said this many times. I'm not a fanatic on religion, but I kind of made a promise in England. The first day that I was able to set my feet out on the floor, I said, get me out of here. And I will always try to help my fellow man. I will never do anything against my fellow man. And I've tried to live to that. And I was in the insurance business for 40 years. And as with the Nationwide Insurance, it's an advertisement. But they felt enough of me that they had what they call a service award. And that was service to your policyholders and your community. And I'm very proud because I'm the only man in the history of the company that ever won 2 of them. I'm recommended for 2 more. Everybody else has only ever won 1. It's a plate, a nice plate with an inscription on it. And I'm very proud of that because I've been in everything in my community that I can be. And that's what they had to do. They had to make up a booklet of your achievements, and I feel very proud of that.
Why should today's generation or future generations understand what the 2nd Air Division did during World War II?
That's a good question, really. Some of us feel that we did some of it in vain. We were sold out, not by the Air Force, but by our government. The situation wouldn't be in Europe today if we hadn't let Russia do some things that they did. If Patton could have went beyond the Rhine, we'd have never had to split Germany. We'd had a good ally in Germany, a real good ally. They don't teach in school patriotism. The kids today think this is here now. This has happened just now. It hadn't happened here 100, 200 years ago, the struggle. So they can't relate. They just can't relate to this kind of thing until somebody gets up and tells them about it. Now, I taught a class for 2.5 years, about 2.5 years in high school on this. And it was more or less home and living that I taught. And I put a little reflection in on my own experiences at times, you know. And I'm a very great advocate that I think every man, every boy and girl coming out of high school should serve 2 years in the service, get some credits out of that for college, and then go on with their lives. And that way I think they would understand what this country's all about. And I don't think we'll ever again have a World War II, a Vietnam, or a Korea. I honestly believe that.
Tell us what you think the world or history should remember about your contribution to the war effort.
I think not just my contribution, but the hundreds of thousands of men who sacrificed and died so that we never again will have this happen.